Oh, what's happening? Oh man, I'm laughing. Welcome, welcome to another episode of Spencer Uncensored. This is episode 58. Holy cow, we just keep getting closer and closer. We're on the backside of the 50, closer to 100 now. And so, anyway, I had to test it out because last week we had a technical problem. Tested it out, and there was a video that showed up a little while ago. It was like just my head sticking up. And I was laughing because I think Dan from New Jersey popped in and said, good evening, like he normally does when he comes on here. And I he didn't realize that wasn't live. Anyway, so we're here. All right. Spencer Uncensored, episode 58. What are we going to do tonight? What are we going to talk about tonight? Well, let me give you some progress on what we've done in the last week. So and today, Tuesdays, a lot of times are very much a creation day for me. That's very much project oriented, working on stuff, making things happen. Not a lot of one-on-ones. Sometimes we do some evaluations and things like that, which, by the way, if you're listening to this and you're like, you know what? Let me see what Spencer's got to say. You can go to spencercombs.com/eval, EVAL, and schedule a time. We'll get on a call, figure out what's going on with your business. I trust it'd be useful for you. We had somebody last week, I think it was. When did I have that call? Yeah, it was last week sometime. And I trust it was useful for them. But anyway, so here we are now. We have launched in and with the real estate reset course. And that's been an interesting little journey for a lot of different agents because of the activity that they've got to do to make that happen, make things happen with it. There's a lot of fundamentals and basics that people love to they just kind of skip over. It's like, yeah, it's functional. And so they leave it alone. They don't touch it. The reason it's called a reset is because there's some things probably in your business that you just need to slow down and work on, right? I got an agent right now. I just double checked. They're actually a producing agent. They do rather well. Unfortunately, their website, if you click on their Google website, right, their Google business ad or their business, the website it takes you to is a HomeSnap site. HomeSnap is no longer around, so now it's but it's still out there. And so the reason we do what we're doing in the real estate reset is to go back and double check and make sure these things are all flowing like they should, right? Other simple things like I don't have my own name as a URL. We talk about that stuff. Like you should own your name. Even if you don't use it, like market with it, you should own your own name if you can get it, unless it's a very common name. But anyway, so there's a lot of things in the real estate reset we're doing. The big news, I think, from the past week is that I decided to go ahead and take the entire practical planning section of that module and give it away. And I know that probably sounds crazy to some people. It's like, really? Yeah, the reason why that would sound crazy to some is because it's actually I would probably tell you it's one of the most valuable portions of the whole thing. Right? Dan, get a text message. I'm gonna let him know. Anyway, the practical planning portion, I would venture to tell you, is like the most important thing that we go through. The reason I think it's the most important is because a lot of agents get into real estate business, or business people in general. They learn the craft of how to, write a contract, meet with people, show houses, do all that kind of stuff. And then they get so overworked mentally with what should I be doing now? And how do I do this? And so they either, I'll tell you what stumps them. I'll tell you what stumps people. The simplicity is what usually fools people in the real estate business specifically. And in both directions. Let me explain to you what I mean by that. Some people cannot believe that it's actually as simple as it is. And so they make it way more complicated than it has to be. And then other people recognize that it's simple and don't ever do anything because it's simple. It's kind of like I could do it at any time. I'll get started. The problem is that they keep kicking the can down the road and forget that there's a 90-day cycle that goes on with real estate. Usually, it takes a couple of days, weeks, or whatever to get up and running, find some prospects, and then take those prospects and turn them into clients, and then take those clients and get them under contract and close. It's not exactly an activity that happens right away, right? So with that being said, the simplicity causes people a challenge. The simplicity causes a challenge for people, because if it's that simple, it can't be, right? So they make it more complicated, or it's simple. I can just get started at any time, and then they never really get going at a high level. So they don't put the effort into it. We actually address that issue in practical planning. Practical planning is something I've been doing for a very long time. And it's because it's effective. The challenge, like I said, agents, they seem to know what they need to be doing. They know the general stuff. The problem is they get so overwhelmed and got so many things going on that just can't seem to get any kind of level of focus. And if you know the unshakable framework, you know that the second building block is priorities. You have to be able to focus, meaning you move towards something specific, and you have to have a mindset of focus, and you have to have the mechanics of system, well, not systems, but excuse me, standards, right? You got KPIs and things like that. You got specific numbers you need to hit, standards, and that's where you create these priorities. Problem is that the agents just, in my experience, overwhelm themselves with so many priorities that they have no priorities. They don't know. I had a call this morning with an agent who has all the tools, knew everything that was in front of her, but she was just completely like stumped. Like, I don't, what am I supposed to be doing right now? And sometimes that's what people need. You just need somebody to say, don't just do this, and do this. Practical planning allows for you to create those levels of priorities, because you lay out your purpose, you lay out the outcomes, and then you break it down, and then you get into this rhythm of constant planning, execution, and feedback. That's what it's all about. But the problem is that most agents, when I start talking about planning and we talk about that rhythm, that's super cool, Spencer. We could do that. Yeah. I like that idea. We're gonna check in on our numbers every week, and we're gonna adjust our behaviors every week, and we're gonna just keep making progress that way. I love it, love it, love it. Problem is, if it's not rooted in very specific outcomes for the year, that's not specifically attached to an outcome for 3 to 5 years, you lost the game. One of the things I actually talk about at the practical planning course that we just put out for everybody, and if you want that, by the way, you can just message me. I'll tell you how to get it. And those of you that are already on the Unshakable HQ, you already have it too. Or if you have the plan, if you're in the Real Estate Reset, all of those have practical planning. You have access to it. Anyway, there's a syntax to all of this. And if I strip it back to just make it as simplistic as possible, everybody says, well, you should start with why. I found that the average person has there's a faster path at articulating what. What do you want? What's the outcome? What do you want? So the first question is what? Then the second question is going to be why? Why do you want that? When you attach the why to the what, or when you interpret it, actually, right? Because there's things that you have on your list of desires, if you will, without any idea of what it is that you want to get done, right? What do you want and why do you want it? If you've never articulated that, there's probably a couple of reasons for it. Some people don't want to talk about why they want whatever it is because they're embarrassed by it, or they don't feel like they deserve it, or they feel like, yeah, or they think it's something I should be doing, isn't it, Spencer? Like, what do you want? Oh, I want to be able to pay for my kids' college. Why? Well, because I'm a good parent. You read that in a book somewhere? That a good parent pays for their kids' college? Are you doing it out of obligation? Now, you can see how this can get real psychological real fast, right? Or maybe, what do you want? Well, I want an Aston Martin. Why? Well, this is one of those situations like a super expensive car, or I want something that's fun, right? And you're kind of embarrassed to share it because you don't want to feel like you're being overly egotistical or something, right? Or I'm showing off. I want an Aston Martin myself for multiple reasons. One, I love the idea of performance. It's a conversation around performance for me, and so it exudes, or it's congruent with what I believe is a way of life. And sure, people are going to look at it and be like, damn, that's cool. Yeah. And they associate performance with me. So therefore, I want an Aston Martin. That's why. Why do I want a house on water? Why do I want a house on water? Well, the reason I want a house on water is not about the house. That's my wife's concern. Although we do like to entertain. I like getting on a grill and entertain and have people, that kind of thing. My wife and I actually enjoy doing that kind of thing. But the house conversation is not as important to me as it is about the location of being on water. Just today, half a mile from my house is the St. John's River. So today, I went and walked up there, sat at the water, did a meditation process, and then came back home. I love sitting and being with water. Why do you want it? Because it gives me peace. So what do you want? If the what is not big enough, you're not going to get deep enough on the why. Let's just put it that way. All right. These are the things that we talk about, though, in practical planning. What do you want is question one. Why do you want it is question two. Question number three. Sometimes I wonder if it should be how. But typically, I ask people, who do you need to be to make that happen? I think when you get the why and the what, the why, and the who clarified, I think the how comes a little bit easier. But who do you need to become? So here's a fun exercise I just did with an agent of ours recently. If you got pen and paper, let's do a little exercise. Write down, I want you to think of the absolute worst client you've ever had in your life. Worst. This is always a little fun. People, maybe drop some of the characteristics in the comments. Like, what's the absolute worst clients? How would you describe them? I'll give those of you on video a second. Y'all are quiet tonight. Okay, fine. Be that way. I think we all know that some of these, some of the things that I've always, every time I do this exercise, people write or say things like disrespectful, not on time, they're ambivalent, right? They're wishy-washy. They use different words, but they can be downright mean. They're unqualified. They moody, never happy, right? I hear you, Dan. High strung, delusional, texting at 11 o'clock at night and 6 a.m. nonstop. Okay. All right. So they're not respecting boundaries, right? Hell on wheels. Okay. That's interesting. I think we could come up with a whole list of these people, right? Or characteristics of the absolute worst client we've ever had. Demanding is another one, right? All right. What I usually do is I have agents like circle the 2 or 3 that are if these characteristics show up, I'm not working with that person. Like I would walk away from this person. That way you know exactly who I'm never going to work with, right? Or refer them out to somebody that's equipped differently. All right. All right, shake that off. Let's think about the best client you've ever thought of. Best client you've ever closed a deal with, ever. Describe that person. What are some of the characteristics of the absolute best client I've ever had? Now, in some cases, it's like the opposite of the negative one. I'm just looking to see if you guys drop anything in the comments for me. A lot of times it's things like, qualified, respectful, they're decisive, like they'll make decisions. They don't get bent out of shape when the transaction goes sideways or whatever. They just roll with it and get what they want, right? All right. They're on time, right? All these types of things. Yeah, integrity, following instructions, in line with my pace, keeping things together. Yeah, right. Well, if I now took that list and I said, okay, what are the 2 or 3 characteristics of a perfect client or the best client that I would consider, I would love to have every time? What are the 2 or 3 characteristics of the perfect client, or the 2 or 3 that I would want on everyone? And now what you're going to end up with is 2 or 3 terrible things that they must never have, and the 2 or 3 things they must have every time. These are characteristics. We're describing a client, right? Well, that's fun. But now we basically got our perfect avatar. Here's the clincher, though. We don't get what we want. We get who we are. So when you're looking at this big what and why, and now we're figuring out who do I have to become? You've got the perfect client in front of you. You're going to have to become the kind of person that client would want to work with, which probably means integrity. You follow instructions. You're in line with the pace, right? That was something that you wrote down, Dan, right? I'm not disrespectful. I'm not hell on wheels, right? I'm not delusional. When I become who I need to become, then I will attract that kind of client more often. This is very much a relational game. Relationships. By the way, tomorrow's Valentine's Day as of the time that we're doing this video. Tomorrow's Valentine's Day. Let's talk about the relationship side of this business. If you treat your customers or your clients or your prospects or the people that you talk to in a way that sounds like, if I do this, you're going to do that, that is not a relationship, ladies and gentlemen. That is a transaction. But Spencer, I'm closing deals. Those are transactions. If you want to churn business as a transactional person, then the nature of the relationship is the transaction. If you want to increase the quality of the relationship or the transaction, then you're going to have to increase the quality of the relationship. Oh man, we can go on and on with this kind of stuff. Listen, here's what I know. All right, let's rein it all back into from the very beginning. If you're struggling with knowing exactly what I should be doing from moment to moment, week to week, month to month, I'm not on track. I can't get my focus. I'm all over the place. You need practical planning. If you're having an issue with really understanding, like you feel like you're overshooting or you're just throwing stuff out there and see what sticks, you need practical planning. I can't tell you the number of times I've talked to somebody and they say, well, I've got to close 36 transactions to get where I want to go. I got to do 3 a month. How much money is that? Oh, it's plenty of money. It's enough for me to do what I want to do. What do you want to do? Well, I'll figure it out. You need practical planning. If you cannot articulate what you're doing for the year and don't have a price tag for it, you need practical planning. If you're struggling with drive and sustainable drive, like the kind of drive that gets you up in the morning and keeps you going when things aren't going the way you want them to, and you cannot find a way to just always be on your game, or at least only get off the game a little bit at a time and then find yourself back in the driver's seat. If you haven't figured that out, you need practical planning, because that's what we talk about in the very beginning. Drift to drive. That's the whole book, by the way, that we're writing. Lord, that's been more of a, you hear everybody talk about writing books like, oh, it takes time and it's yeah, I've always kind of dismissed it like it was not that big of a deal. That has proven to be a bigger challenge in my life than I realized. The research and the things that need to go into it, and just making a cohesive message that works for you guys. It's not something you just slap together. But anyway, Unshakable Drive is essentially the primer of practical planning. It's the very beginning. If you don't know how to get into drive, right? If you can't prime your mind and your life into a forward direction of what it is you're doing and why you want to do it and who you have to become, you're going to struggle breaking that down into actionable pieces that helps you have clarity about your outcome. And if you don't have that, the process of planning, execution, and feedback is just going to be a rhythm you're going into, but it's not attached to anything of value. So I'm trusting all of that made sense. If you don't have practical planning, send me a message. I'll get it to you. Those of you that are been commenting on here, you guys already have it. So do what you need to do with it. And for those of you that want to share this kind of stuff with other people, please do. Practical planning, you can send them, actually just send them to spencercombs.com. It's a huge thing on the front page of my website right now because we're giving it away. It's been helpful. So, all right, friends, thanks for being here tonight. It's been another episode of Spencer Uncensored. No F-bombs dropped tonight, so that's kind of cool, I suppose. Maybe there's more alcohol required. I'm playing. All right, friends, y'all have a good night. Thanks for being here. We'll see you soon.